Imagine a league built by the people, for the people. A league dedicated to the economic development of your city. So the question becomes, how good are the 32 teams that play in the minor football league? Well, there's only one way to find out. You have to experience the MFL.
Welcome to another edition of Inside the MFL. I'm your host, Richard Myles Sr., CEO, Chairman, and founder of the Minor Football League. I'm going into it today. I want to tell everybody, beware. I mean, I sound like a broken record when I come on and I talk about this COVID-19 because I was sad to hear that a young man died that was 9 years old. That's sad. I'm telling everybody to take caution and please wear your face mask. People have the nerve to be getting mad because somebody tell them to put their face mask on. Also, I have my co-host here, Mr. Robert Gatewood. How you doing, Robert?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, Miles. Everything good? How about yourself?
Okay, of course, you know I have our dance team director here. I mean, she just had to ball some people out the last time, I know, so I know we'll get into that. And we also have Ken Jones on here from DK Sports. How you doing, sir? You got your face mask on.
Well, you know, I know the MFL is very contagious, so I just want to make sure I got that
Y'all like that
out of the way.
Right, face mask. See, that's good. I like that. But yes, it's sad. So first of all, I want to ask how's everybody? Everybody safe? Your family safe and everything? And your family safe and everything? How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Okay.
Stay in the course.
Great. Also, you know that we signed another GM for the Oklahoma Cowboys. We're excited about that. South Carolina Outlaws, we got that deal done. We also had the deal done up there in Houston, Texas with the Rams. That deal is done. So we kind of moving right along, sir. You know what I mean? We move right along, as Robert said, you know, our money man to keep us abreast of all the things that are going on about business. Of course, we're going to have this segment with Robert, but we're going to jump right on in right now. So what's going on, Robert?
Well, like you said earlier, Miles, this pandemic is pretty much driving a lot of decisions right now in the economy and business and even sports, as we've seen. We tried to get sports going. It seemed like there's a monkey wrench in that real fast. So it seems to be, we don't, like you said, we don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think we have to, because I think some people, they have pandemic fatigue. And so they're desperate to get back to some sense of normalcy. But just because you're tired of something doesn't make it go away. And so we're seeing a resurgence of the cases and the fatalities. Businesses are retreating back to some of the earlier stages of opening. So this is going to have an impact on our economy for months, if not years to come. So we just might as well get used to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something I really want to go into. We want to go in, take a few moments and go into that. And as you know, Ken, you know, everybody rushing to try to get sports started again. And I know you have a lot to say on that. So why is the other leagues in such a rush, knowing we don't have a cure for this stuff? We don't know what it is. And if you catch it, can you catch it again? Why are the other leagues so dead set on pushing the envelope anyway?
Miles, it comes down to one word: money. It's all about getting the business going, so at least the owners, whatever the league is, can take advantage of either the television rights money or whatever they can do supplementally to get that money flow coming in, because the players are in a bad situation. If they don't play, they don't get paid. Now, there is a small stipend like in the NFL, but in matter of fact, one of the Kansas City Chiefs did this. He took the option of opting out and they'll pay him about $200,000 versus about $2.7 million. So there's a big money difference, but the owners, especially in the NFL, want to get the games played. They're saying, oh, it's later in the year. It's in the fall. We think we can get, now we're doing training camp, and we think we can get some games going. The preseason is gone for the NFL. Baseball on the other side, outbreak in Miami, which is Florida's been one of the worst states all along, and they have these upticks all the time because people go out and they don't wear their mask, or they don't social distance. Because I'm over 6 feet tall, Miles. I know you're a tall guy as well as Robert, and people don't know what 6 feet is. They think 6 feet is 4 feet, or they think 6 feet is 2.5 feet. If they would keep the social distance, be one thing. But the best thing to do is just not engage. And since you know firsthand, Miles, especially since you played in the NFL, anytime you play a sport like football, there's contact, and it's up close and personal.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I don't think you can get around that.
You're susceptible thus for that. But it comes down to, in the short answer, it's money.
Anyway.
I know that, everybody talking about, they're getting excited about the dance team and want to know what's going on. So we have to have you on for everybody that's trying to find out about that. Lisa, I'm quite sure that you have a lot to say about that. And that's why, we have a director of our dance team. What do we tell these people right now? Because, we got about 3,000 people registered so far, and that's not counting the women. But, everybody want to get going now, and we told them to say, yeah, we're going to go in 21. And they're like, well, what about 2000, 2020? And I know you had some things that stay on that as well.
Yeah, that's so true. Everyone is excited to get sports up and going again. I think everyone has cabin fever and just wants to get back to some sort of normalcy. It's the time of year. We're coming into fall. We're getting ready to almost like hibernate and coming into another winter. So people really look forward to these sports and seeing the athletes playing. It keeps, gets us through the winter months. But like everyone sees, there is a resurgence. You see the numbers spiking in so many states. And I agree with you 100%, the most important thing is keeping the athletes safe and the spectators, everyone involved. So we don't want to see one person coming out of this with getting ill. So as far as the dance team goes, we have, I'm very, very excited and I can't wait to go, but once we get the green light, that's when we'll be heading out and all the information will be out there. What people can do is just continue to log into the MFL and put their inquiries, send us emails so we can contact you once we're ready and set to go, and give you all the information when we'll be in your area.
Because, a lot of women, it's a resurgence in the women that's calling about the dance team, and they're excited, but, I just don't, I know you all ready to go and fly to different states and stuff to make sure these dance teams go smoothly, but I have to be very mindful of y'all. I have to watch out for y'all safety as well, and along with the other coaches and the GMs and the players and the MFL, a nation as a whole, it's not worth it to us to see one person catch it. One person is too much for the MFL. I mean, that's something we can't allow that at all. And I'm quite sure Robert will elaborate on that even more, but we just have to be careful with this, Robert.
Yes, what I've been impressed by is the attempt, at least innovation that I've been seeing some of the industries take. The whole bubble concept in sports, we're going to see how that pans out. That's been, every time they talk about the bubble just keeps bigger and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that works and if it can be controlled and contained. Well, the first experiment didn't work, but we're seeing similar innovations in other industries. I saw an app the other day where, I'm not sure what sport it was, where you take your picture and they put you in the stands and they charge you like an admission to a ticket. So we're seeing, what's the old necessity drives invention, and that's how you're going to get your next wave of entrepreneurs. Whoever can beat this thing and come up with the best ideas, we're looking at the next wave of millionaires. So I've been, as my company, as a business consultant, I've been really impressed by some of the innovations and really how resourceful people can be. Because once we accept the fact that this is not a 3-month problem or 3-month pandemic, then we're going to start seeing people who are really kind of trying to wait it out. They're starting to hunker down and come up with ideas and seeing how they can sustain for the next year or two, because it's going to be at least another year before we start seeing anything close to what we're used to. So I'm impressed by the innovation. The other thing that I'm seeing is that some companies are doing extremely well during this pandemic. We as a society feel a little guilty when we profit from other people's misfortune, but we can look at it as a if you don't have a humane side of it, just saying you're providing a service to keep people safe. So, and I look at my business that way as we help companies come up with new ideas and expand into new opportunities and other distribution channels. So I think of course, nobody wants a pandemic, but I do encourage all of the business owners and entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs to look at the opportunities that are emerging from this pandemic. And some people will have to pivot and go into new careers.
Well, and Robert, being around you, I understand both edges of the sword. We don't want people not to work because we know someone have to pay the bills, and we can't just stay home forever and like the world gonna pass us by. I mean, we're smart enough to know better than that. But is it worth it? Is it worth it that and I don't want to beat up other leagues or anything like that. I understand we have to come up with some kind of solution, but what we're doing now, I would think that it's a little rushed. Maybe am I saying it, understanding this, not rushing, but because we can't stay dormant. Why do you think that these leagues are, and I know I asked you this earlier, we understand the drive is money. We understand that a lot of the college conferences did shut it down. That was good. But we know the Power 5 conference not going to do that. We know that the NFL, the NBA is going to have some problems. And believe me, I'm not a hater. I'm happy for anybody doing anything, Robert. You know that about me. Mm-hmm. They know me. But I can't see that this is safe with the bubble with the NBA. You see what's happened with baseball. Now the football players, you're going to be around people. These guys go home. I know it's no surefire way, but I'm going to put that pressure on you. What can we do? What is it? What is the logical thing to do, if any at all?
Well, I think that's it. First of all, Myles, I've always known you to be a realist, and that's what you need to be as a person in this situation. What's the smaller conferences, the Mid-Americas have done is they said, no, even Ivy, we're not going to play anything rest of the season. The football season has been canceled. Now, some of the high schools are pushing it into next year or late in 2020. But to your point, it's got to be cautionary. And even if you have this bubble like Robert was talking about, where you're basically quarantining your players and nobody can leave this bubble. But as Robert also said, it keeps getting bigger and bigger. Well, at some point when a bubble keeps getting bigger and bigger, it bursts. And that's the problem. There's a huge liability issue here. And it won't be until the first athlete actually dies that it's going to be the urgency is really going to set in, because these players have to play. Because again, we talked about making a living. This is what they do for a living. This is their profession. The owners of whatever team, whatever league, we know how they stand. I mean, they're multimillionaires to begin with, and so they got there in one way or another. But if a sport's not played, there's no revenue coming in, and that's an issue across the board. But there isn't an easy answer, because you asked the multi-billion-dollar question. And if I or somebody had the answer to that, they get a big paycheck, Myles. That's the way that works. So you got to be super cautious. That's why I am not paranoid, but I am super cautious. You have to watch who you're exposed to, because still here we are 4+ months later, nobody really knows who has it, how you get it, or all those other elements that people thought they knew, or the professionals, doctors, etc., thought they knew exactly how it was transmitted, but they're still trying to trace people and figure out who actually is a carrier because they don't know. So that it really puts it's a super slippery slope, and it's a really talk about a double-edged sword. The blade is very, very sharp on both edges.
Liz, I got to ask you, I know, and you up there is not spiking. I think y'all pretty good up there, right?
Yeah, we actually are doing pretty well here in New York.
Okay. I mean, yeah.
Nobody lives there anymore, Miles. Everybody moved out.
Yeah, that may be the reason they all went south.
Down there. I mean, it's a mess down there. I mean, just from the dance team director of the MFL. I mean, and I know you got there, knowing the type of person you are. I know you at home sometimes you're figuring out, how do we, how would I go about this? And I know some parts of the country is spiking more than others. And you down there, because the gyms call me all the time and say, well, the schools, said we can go. I said, no, the school had nothing to do with, the governor had nothing to do with the MFL. I said, we don't go. But how do you rationalize the fact that when people talk with you and you say, well, how am I going to do this? Because I know you're going to be doing a lot of traveling as soon as this break. But the question is, when it's going to break? We don't know that. And I know that can be somewhat aggravating for the most part.
Well, kind of reiterating what Keith was saying is there's still so much uncertainty about this virus. And I think what's happening is that so many people are getting conflicting information. So one day they're telling you to wear a mask, the next day they're not. Some people are doing it, some are not following suit. And I think the people are getting frustrated. So what you're seeing is people trying to come up with these different ways of coping, trying to be somewhat normal with, and if they have the funds to be able to quarantine their players, like Robert said, keeping them in a bubble, that, may help. But at some point, the same way the virus managed to get out, it's going to get in. And you're seeing that with certain teams right now, where somehow, even though they're following the protocols, people are getting sick still. So with the dance team, similarly, you're physically active. You're finding that people who are getting ill, many of them are, even though they recover, they're left with long-term ailments. It could be whether it affects their lungs or their heart or neurologically. So, really, I think it's a good thing and a good call to just kind of slow down and let's see and wait until we get a grip on what actually is going on and how they plan to, really keep it under control, I think is the thing. And we're still not clear on that. So I don't feel comfortable putting dancers at risk at this point. I don't think it's worth it. Like you said, if one person gets sick, it would just be an awful feeling.
And Lisa, when are you ready to jump on a plane?
I had my tickets, so I had to cancel a lot of flights.
And the next flight's going to be?
Well, since I'm in New York, I plan to go and visit with our New York Rochester GM, Pat Freeman, and I'm able to travel there and not worry about coming back and having to be quarantined for 2 weeks. I plan to maybe go to DC and catch up with some people there and, do what I can, but at the same time, really being mindful and wearing the mask and just keeping distance. I don't want to get anyone sick. I feel great. and I knock on wood, but you know, I want to keep it that way.
And Robert, as you know, Robert keeps the business part of it, the NFL together. Robert, I mean, let's just be honest, everybody. We're not going to do what we're supposed to do. No matter what we say, having all those players there, I'm really concerned about the players coming to camp with the NFL, even the NBA. Robert, we're not going to do what we're supposed to do. Right or wrong, Robert? Come on.
Well, actually, we're not. And I'll tell you why. Because we have two competing interests. We have our lives to worry about, but we also have our livelihood. And I think sometimes we're not completely honest when we say that we don't consider the livelihood just as important as our lives. That's something we might think in private or might even consider. We might talk in circles and we won't say out loud. But there's an old saying, and not to be sexist, they say a man is what a man does. And that applies to women too. And many people feel like if they don't have their livelihood, they really might as well not have their life. But that's not politically correct to say. But that's what people are living right now. They are not doing what they should be doing from protecting your lives standpoint, because they're focusing on protecting their livelihood. Like Keith said, he said it's about the money. That's a simple way to put it. It's a little more nuanced because we get emotions, we have responsibilities, we have families and children and businesses. And so that livelihood element is really stronger than most people are willing to admit. And I think until we have a sit down and really just bring that out into the open, we're going to see people taking these steps. They're going to be opening up when they shouldn't open. They're going to be playing when they shouldn't play, because this is almost like a mental health issue as well as a financial and a health issue. It's a mental health issue as well. People are really concerned about losing their livelihood, which is basically a means of securing the necessities of life. And that's predominantly, if you are a power-driven person, a business owner, a team owner, that is so heavy, I don't think it's given enough weight in the conversation.
Well, we also have to understand, gentlemen, ladies, the norm is gone. I mean, whether we want to admit it or not, the norm is gone. What is the new norm now? We're still trying to figure that out. I mean, I think you all will agree with me on that. But, you know, the norm is gone. How do we get, you know, Keith, I'm trying to help me with this. How do we need to start the new norm, but just what is the new norm? I mean, Robert, but let me go to Keith with that. What is the new norm?
See, that's the other $1 billion question. There, if you knew what it was, they'd pay you, send you a check, because it's a work in progress, because most people haven't been down this road before. Mm-hmm. And it's a whole nother, whether it's business, as Robert's talking about, the livelihood is vital to people, and thus that drives the economy, and the economy allows you to have expendable income, so you can buy tickets to football games, and you can go out and you can dance and you can do different things. But if you don't have that, it's totally upside down, and that's where most people are. They fortunately are not losing their homes and things to that, because other businesses realize that what happened in 2008 is unacceptable. What happened in a pandemic that nobody can really control anyway. So they keep that part of the economy going, at least in the interim. But again, to Robert's point, that the livelihood is this what the athletes do. You know, whether it's the MFL or the NFL or whatever league you want to say professionally, that's what they do. And the administrators. So you're not on the football field, but you're in the administrative office, or you are working on the field, you're a grounds crew member or whatever it is. It's all so many things. You're a concessionaire in a stadium. Well, there are no fans anymore in stadiums, so those guys are without work. So that it's this huge trickle down, which really is more like Niagara Falls for a New York reference, where the water has not started to trickle. It's now just pouring out, and nobody knows how to re-jam the dam.
Mm-hmm.
Are we pushing? We as a society, are we trying to, as opposed to waiting till we find out exactly what's going on? Are we being too pushy? are we pushing this? And while we go out there and do it, if they anyway, everything will change. Do you feel that way, gentlemen, and especially you? Do you feel that way? Because people just got the attitude, we don't care. We going out there, even if it costs us our lives. I'm going to the bar. I'm going to the club. I'm going to the movie. I'm gonna do this and that. Even as immature as it sounds, I think we're getting too sick and tired of being sick and tired. But on the same hand, we got to understand this is something we do not have any control of, and we do not know what it is. Do you get that sense of we're trying to push it anyway?
Well, we're one of the greatest societies to ever exist, and with our society in the United States comes freedoms, and people. Part of the freedom is to be able to go walk out your front door and virtually go wherever you want, walk or run or drive your vehicle, whatever vehicle that may be. And when you take that away, those freedoms from people, they're not used to that. So it's a big adjustment. This whole thing has been a big adjustment for everybody. I mean, fortunately, some people can work from home, telework, or not, not have to go into a physical office because they've created one in their house and stuff. Not everybody's that fortunate. There are a lot of people that have no employment now, and they don't want to lose what they've gotten. But you've got to step back, like you were talking, Miles. And Robert was even alluding to. There's the life and there's the livelihood, but you can't have the life without the livelihood, and you can't have the livelihood without and vice versa. So if you're not around, all the money in the world is not going to do you any good. And if you've put yourself in a compromising position by going out to a bar, and not to give Lisa credit here, but I mean, New York and New York City specifically, when they're opening up venues or restaurants or bars, and people are out there, and even I think Dr. Fauci said, bar is one of the worst things because once you start enjoying adult beverages, all reasoning goes out the window. So, so it's again, keeping yourself mentally stable, which is a challenge as well. And while at the same time trying to progress yourself, trying to remake yourself, but also trying not to harm yourself. So there's a lot of, and not everybody can juggle real well. So there are a lot of balls in the air for a lot of people, and some people can handle the balls juggling and some can't. So
yeah.
Yes, we are. I think we are. We were rushing a little bit.
And I think, Robert, we got to understand the problem is, and let me rephrase that. I'm sorry, it's not a problem. I'll say this: the great thing about the United States that we have rights. The problem is you can have so many rights, you don't have no rights at all. We have the right to do certain things. You have the right not to do certain things, and might not agree with some of the things I want to do, Robert. Why is that so with people in business? And we hit on that. We get right back to you, Liz, in a minute. Why is it the different? Even though we know what's going on here, we can't stop. We know that. What is it about? This is a trying time. There's no question about it. But as you stated earlier, we can't just close the doors and look out the window and say it's going to go away, Robert.
Well, that's true. I think another factor I don't think it's talked about enough is this pandemic it hasn't rained on the just and the unjust alike. It hasn't been distributed. The pain has not been distributed evenly. There are some industries that are doing extremely well. Now, this is the irony. People make laws and people make decisions. And let's use the example of the decision to shut down certain retail operations, certain industries. That was, even though it was the law, it did not affect every industry the same. Some industries were literally put out of business by that decision, while others did great. They actually expanded their operations. You look at an outfit like Amazon, Walmart, they're making as much money as they can count. And so then you have some other small mom and pop shop who may have had a restaurant or a hair salon. They've been put out of business. So it's not an equal opportunity pandemic. It has helped some companies expand beyond their wildest dreams, while others have actually been closed down. So I think that's another one of the nuances that has made it like you say, some people feel like it's infringing upon their rights, and it may have, because if they can't create a job or a livelihood for their families, then they do feel like their rights have been infringed upon. While other people, and sometimes I kind of frown when people sit back and say what we should do or what somebody else should do, when their job is they're not affected at all. They're making more money. They can work from home. They have a big house. They can put the kids downstairs. They put somebody else here. They're not feeling the same pain as that single mom who's a hairdresser. What is she supposed to do? She's got a kid. She doesn't have internet. Her job is nobody's coming to her house. She can't go out. So what about her? Now that's why I'm in favor of. I'm seeing some innovations again. Some of these companies are coming up with UBI, Universal Basic Income, to help level that playing field. Twitter from Jack Dorsey from Twitter, presidential candidate Yang, they brought up this idea, and I think it's gonna have to accelerate if we're gonna continue to tell people to stay home, stay put, because it is not affecting everyone the same. So I feel very much pain when a client of mine can't work, can't provide for their families, and then you have the government basically saying, don't open up. They shouldn't open up because it's not safe. But what are they supposed to do? I mean, that's a tough question when you think about it.
Yeah, that's the as Keith said, the $1 million question.
Right.
What do we do, Les? What do we do? How do we counteract this, or what's the rational part that we try to find a solution to this? And maybe I'm not using the right word, solution, because this right here can go on for a while.
Yeah. I think Robert kind of touched on it a little bit before when he said we have to kind of reinvent ourselves and how we can come up with, continuing with what we do. When you think about it, the sports and entertainment industry has been hit the hardest from this pandemic. And it, again, like you said, also, a lot of people are discouraged because and they're saying, where do you draw the line on what's essential and what's not essential?
Right.
You have people who even question if this pandemic is actually true until someone they know actually comes down and gets sick. So you have a lot of people in denial here again, because it just seems like we get so many conflicting information. People start to question, am I just blindly following along, or is there some validity to what's being said? And so we're relying on the health industry to kind of guide us as far as how to proceed and how to be cautious and move forward. But again, the economy has a lot to do with what's going to drive decisions. And, I don't think anyone ever expected that we would be here coming into August and still dealing with this. I think if you all remember, at one point, they were really optimistic that when the summer came with the warmer weather, this virus would kind of subside a little bit, and then it would resurge maybe in the fall when it got a little bit cooler. Now we're seeing the opposite, where the states down in the South, where you have the weather is extremely warm, and you're seeing the resurgence there. So it tells you that obviously that there is, the way of contracting it is more than just really being social, and you need to really focus on distancing and wearing a mask and doing those things just to try to prevent yourself from getting sick and prevent someone else from getting sick. It's not a 100% cure-all. It's not going to protect you 100%, because they're saying it's possible you can get it through droplets in the eyes and all this. And here again, it's just showing that they're still unsure of what's going on. So for us to step out and say, oh, we have the answer, you know, when you have the medical experts still scratching their heads.
Well, you know, being human beings, we do not like to be restricted. You know what I mean? And
Right.
we realize how something like walking down the street, not being able to do that kind of drive you crazy. You know what I mean? That you can't do the things that we would normally take for granted that we would do. Now we have to be very careful in doing these things. And getting to you, Keith, I mean, we know sports drives everything. Sports jobs, you know, a lot of things come off of sports. Being, even you being a journalist and cover, you know, the different professional leagues and stuff, it has to be difficult for you because you're one that people will be on the front line. You know, you have to be around these guys that's saying they doing what they're supposed to do. But in reality, you say to yourself, oh, I wonder if he, you know, so it has to be hard on you. I mean, what, you know, being a journalist and what you do covering, you know, the NFL, NBA, MFL, how did that, what kind of mindset did that put you in?
It's definitely disheartening, and I never thought in my lifetime I would say there's no sports. I mean, it just didn't ever dawn on me that that would ever happen. And I miss some of the guys, and I certainly miss covering sports directly. And it's all the way down to the high schools, and I'm sad to hear when games or leagues or different sports get canceled. But it's the safe thing. I have to accept it. You have to digest it. I still have people call me and like yourself and ask me, you know, for my expertise and such. So that's really appreciated and such. But it's difficult. I'm not sure what the new normal is. I obviously we've seen some of the new normal, but covering a team, obviously the media gets access before any of the spectators do going forward. But even then, yeah, you have to keep your distance from there. You have a boom mic operator or a long pole with the microphone on the end. I mean, all these things are just, kind of being used as the situation grows. But as much as I miss sports, I'd like to say I can be around for decades to go to be able to cover sports. So if I'm not going to expose myself, I'm just going to have to accept it and such. But I feel bad for everybody because even like Lisa alluded to, the sports and entertainment industry was just cut off at the knees. And some of those things have taken a long time to come back, and some things may never come back, and they certainly won't come back in the same form. And that's really, really sad and bad for a lot of people. And when you have a situation like Broadway goes dark and stays dark, and you have all those musicians besides the actors, you have all those stagehands and stuff out of work. That's all involved with the productions. Or you have professional sports or any sports being aired, and you don't have the crews that are there to broadcast. You don't have the cameramen. You don't have the grips. You don't have any of the other production assistants. None of that exists. So it's really it's changed. It's even at the top level of the networks, everybody's trying to figure it out, trying to find the best way, because as things get discovered or brought on to as a practice, other entities take notice, and then they at some point they usually utilize those because they're a good idea. To what Robert was saying, you kind of reinvent a lot of things, and in business, as soon as something is good enough to be utilized, people will catch on and either duplicate it or go something down that same avenue. And that's what we're starting to see. That's what we'll see. But again, it's going to be quite a long road before. But yes, obviously miss sports, covering sports. I do reach out to different players at different times and such, but it's certainly far from anywhere close to being what it was.
And the things that we generally take for granted, we really can't do that anymore. And getting with you, Robert, this is the time to really seize the opportunity. And it's not that we not being, should I say, sensitive to what's going on, but everybody knows money and chaos. And a lot of people don't want you to say it like that, but it's true. And that's why we had Robert, a co-host. This is where the minor football league come in, an opportunity. And as you know, I'll let Robert go into more, why it's so important to start your own business. And Robert will go into that. And a lot of people think you need a lot of money, although you need money, but this is the time that, and I'll bring Robert in, where you thought you were safe, you realize you're not safe. You took that for granted. You were getting paid all that money with these jobs. Now these jobs are gone. Now what? So Robert, you can elaborate on that, because that's the purpose of having you here. Our co-host, we're talking business, and people need to understand what's the significance in owning your own business.
Well, to lead up to that, in case people need to be regrounded about the seriousness of this pandemic, we're still seeing the death rising. We had 19% more deaths this last week and the week before that. We're past 4 million cases in the United States. We passed 150,000 deaths in the United States, and that's on the health side. On the job side, we're seeing jobless claims rising again. We had 1.4 million people filed for jobless claims last week. We're seeing major retailers going out of business. We saw Lane Bryant, Ann Taylor, The Loft, joining companies like J.C. Penney, Brooks Brothers. Some of these well-known companies have bitten dust. So we have to look at those numbers, and that kind of keeps us grounded and sober in case anybody forgets and feel like we're back to business as normal just because the sun is shining and you can go out to the beach.
Right.
But looking, we have as a country and as a community, we have always been able to draw on our resourcefulness, our innovative abilities to start businesses. That's really what we call it, almost like a get out of jail free card, your joker, your big hand in the deck, because it gives us things, opportunity, flexibilities that a typical job does not give us. And some of the opportunities that are coming up right now, I mean, it's almost feel sinful to say this, that these opportunities are presenting themselves during this pandemic. We have opportunities now to reach more people than ever before using technology like Zoom and some of the digital platforms. And in the past, it was almost impossible to have that type of reach. In advertising, the two main drivers of successful advertising is frequency and reach. You have those two things now at your disposal at a price that you have never seen before. That's one of the positive outcomes. There's new services that we've never seen before that are emerging, and innovators and creators are creating these new services to serve these new set of needs. Technology. If you're in the technology field, the outlooks are great, but you don't have to be an IT person to take advantage of some of these new technologies that are presenting themselves to business owners now. You just have to stay on top of it, be well read, read the journals, go on Google, talk to consultants like myself. And here's one that a lot of small companies are really benefiting from. They don't even realize it yet. But a lot of the big brands took a hit during the early stages of the pandemic. When people couldn't find certain supplies or certain vendors were closed or they had run out of stock, people started trying new products and services. Mm-hmm. And so it was almost like a reset button. A lot of companies that didn't have a chance in the beginning, all of a sudden they got a look. And if they were, as I have been advising them, to take advantage of that window of opportunity, many of them did. So some of the big companies, they don't mind a $1 million loss to them because they were out of stock for a week. It's nothing, but to a small business that had a chance to brand themselves where they didn't otherwise, that could be the difference between having a successful business and a failure. And the last but not least is that there's money available right now. We have the EIDL program, the Economic Disaster Loss Program, and the PPP. Those two things have put money in people's pockets that more than they've ever seen in their lives. In the old days, you couldn't go down to your community bank, no matter how long you had relationships with them, and get a loan. Now, all of a sudden, under the EIDL program, you could get up to 40% of your revenues. You look up one day, you apply for the program. next day there's $50,000 in your account just like that. Now, what I'm asking these small companies to do is to make sure they're following the guidelines, because there will be an accounting, like an EIDL program. You have 30 years to pay it off. You don't have to start paying for until a year from now. Don't go out and blow this money. I heard one guy took his money and bought a Lamborghini. So that's what not to do.
Yeah.
But my point is, small businesses have a window here it's a good time to start a business. If you're in business, promote that business, use good business practices, and make sure that you're doing the things it takes to sustain that business, and even encourage other people and support the other small businesses that are out here struggling, so that we can all come out of this on the other side with a brighter economic future.
And as you said, Robert, because people know, and as you know, Keith, people really get an opportunity to really look at the MFL. So we are one of the businesses that people really, and what's so excited about it, everybody seemed to think we knew. Is this new? I said it's new to you, but it's not new. We've been here. But it was so many other things that they was looking at that they didn't have a chance to look at the MFL and see what we're doing. Now, since everything else came to virtually a crawl or moving when things were going 90 miles an hour, now they're like, we didn't know about that. Robert, it's an opportunity to own the firm. It's an opportunity to job. Economic development. And, we preach it all the time. We are the laboratory of change. And a lot of people begin to realize that now. Keep now they're like, wait a minute. We didn't know about this. We got to take another look at this. We're getting more calls than we ever got. And we've been in the business for 25 years with the league. We celebrating 25 years. But I'm telling you, within the last few months, it's been overwhelming. I mean, you think we was the new NFL, because people understand that, there's a great opportunity here as far as economic development, the laboratory of change, and the opportunity that the playing field is level, even in broadcast, as you know, it makes a difference. Wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. I tell you, Myles, you and the MFL remind me a lot of COVID-19. Keep going and going, and you never give up. I mean, it's one of the greatest 25-year overnight success stories in the history of the world. And the product is there, but it goes further. And this is part of why Robert co-hosts and is sitting in the chair that he's sitting in, because it's not about just the product on the field. It's about opportunities for the players. It's about learning a business. It's about getting involved with it. It's finding out, almost like an apprenticeship in the PGA. It's finding out which part you want to be a general manager of a country club, or you want to teach the game, or what do you want to do? Anything in between. That's what the MFL is to me, and what it really is in essence is the not just the laboratory of change. It is the laboratory of experience. When you say experience the MFL, it's exactly right. It should be the MFL is experience. And for players to do that, having covered specifically the NFL for over a dozen years, these guys make all this money. They come in, they buy those Lamborghinis like Robert was talking about. And then when the career is over, because the NFL stands for not for long, as players will tell you, they have nothing no end game. They've learned nothing. They've come out of university, some of them not as smart as others, and they don't know how to manage their money. They get involved with bad things. This thing going on, and I normally wouldn't bring this in since I'm talking about the NFL, but this Clinton Portis thing, sure. and this fraud, the accusations, all these other things. Players that manage their money or know how to do things around that, or have the good people around them, or whether they're managerial or whether they're personal or whether they're professional, these guys have money on the back end, and they don't blow through all of it, and they don't get involved with shady deals and different things like that. It does happen, as you know, Myles, but right. But the MFL is a training ground for young men and women that come through a system and learn a business, see what they want to be involved with. Maybe they don't want to be the general manager. Maybe they want to be part of the grounds crew. Well, they have that opportunity as well. And that's what I have good respect for what you have developed. And you stayed the course. Again, it's a great 25-year overnight success story. That is the MFL, and it continues to grow. So I'm not overly surprised by your success because of knowing you and know how you operate, and that you have the right mindset, and you always seem to have the best interests of other people in mind, and you know which direction you're going in. So to that, the MFL is here, and it's here to stay.
And I really appreciate that from you, because the fact that we have worked together on a couple of things, and we jokingly, and that's why we love having you on the show, because you're going to give that honest opinion of what we're doing. Also, we have to understand that we, as the MFL nation, we got to educate our people. We standing on people's shoulders, as you know, and people are going to be standing on our shoulders later. So that's why it's so important that we have Robbie here, because we're talking about business. You know what I mean? And yes, the NFL stands for not for long, but we here now. Money for life. That's what the MFL stands for if you own one of these franchises. And that's very important. And for a couple of minutes, tell them why that's so important, Robert.
Well, I say hats off to you also, Myles, because you being the laboratory of change and putting emphasis of people's ability to build a legacy, and instead of making a quick buck out on the football field, I think that's very important. And I understand my role, and because our missions are aligned, and I think that's why it was such a good fit. My joining you on the show every week and in the MFL is because we look beyond the gridiron. We look beyond what are these young men going to do once their football careers are over, because we know it has a very short the life of a football player. I mean, it's 3-4 years, but what are they going to do after that? And then the opportunity of owning a franchise, that's something that is beyond the imagination of most people. So a franchise in the general sense is have about a 90% success rate of trying to start a business from scratch. So if you're looking at an opportunity, and many people, they say, well, look, I can't afford a franchise because it's going to cost me so much money. But few realize that they're going to spend that money or more by starting a business from scratch. You just stretched out over a longer period of time. And then they fail to understand that most businesses have what we call a shelf life. You have a certain period of time to succeed in that business. And if you don't scale it by a certain point, then the chance of succeeding in that business actually diminishes greatly. And that's another factor that a franchise brings to the table versus trying to start a business, because most small companies don't have the resources to scale it soon enough before their time runs out. So there are all types of benefits to owning a franchise. And if you want to look for an opportunity, I would say look at the MFL, give Mr. Myles a call, and let him explain what it feels like. What are the benefits, the ups and downs of owning a franchise? And I'd be also glad to take that call as well to help them understand the financial aspects of it.
That's what Robbie here for. Absolutely. Lisa, why is it so important that we understand that the laboratory change is here, you know?
Well, like Robert was saying, and everyone knows, usually if you have money, what you want to do is diversify your money so that if one part of the market's doing well and the other is not, vice versa. So you want to make sure that you have a good balance. And what's great about the MFL, like you said, is it does offer opportunities for people to come out and experience and get apprenticeships, whether they want to be a player or work behind the scenes. Same thing for the dancers. It's a great opportunity. Once everything opens up again, not everyone's going back to work in the performing arts industry. It's a very difficult career to pursue. So this gives them an opportunity to stay in the light, to continue honing their skills for the players as well. And yet for those, because I mean, right now you have a lot of businesses that are saying, hey, you know what? Working from home, it's working for us. So some businesses may let go of their leases. So we're going to see, this economy struggling for a while. And I think the way we think about diversifying our money, we should be diversifying our skills and what we do, so that you have a balance. I always told dancers, and I'm sure you tell your athletes, always have a backup plan, because if you get injured or something happens, what are you going to do? So the MFL gives a great opportunity. It opens the door for many, many, many different positions to get in and experience. And you're not committed, so you're learning, you're getting hands-on experience, which sometimes that's even better than going to, school where you're just reading about it.
And, I want to thank y'all, my guest, Keith. We always love to have you here. It's like home to you. We love having your expertise. How can MFL Nation get in contact with you?
Well, I'm heading up the sports division over at DKN Sports in Washington, D.C. But anybody can reach out to me, 301-346-5675. Happy to take their call and talk to them about whatever.
And Lisa?
Yes, anyone interested in the dance team for the MFL, they can go online at mflishere.com, or they could shoot me an email at livefitk@gmail.com, or they can contact me at 201-832-9528.
And Robert, our money guru, the man that makes sure we get everybody understanding beyond the field, because it's not, you're right, after you get to playing football, then what? Robert been with us been very instrumental in helping the MFL develop and stuff. How did he get in contact with you, and tell them about your shows, Robert?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to thank Keith and Lisa for joining us today, and great input, great insight. Just glad to be on the panel with them today. My company is Gatewood Marketing and Web. I'm actually a business developer by trade. Been doing that for several years. I'm a contractor for the Small Business Administration. I have my company, Gatewood Marketing. You can find me at gatewoodmarketing.com. And also a radio show every Friday at 10:30 on Radio 1, on Facebook, YouTube Live, Twitter Live. That's called the Marketing Pulpit. We talk about business development and how to build businesses. And that's really the impetus of the show, is to build businesses and putting people to work. You can get that information at marketingpulpit.com, and we'll be on this coming Friday. And of course, I'm here on the MFL every Wednesday at 5 o'clock. Glad to join Myles and what he's doing here. He's put together a great organization, great people, great vision, and glad to be a part of it.
And also, you can get in contact with us. Our website is mflishere.com. We're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're on all the different platforms, and I just want people to understand that the MFL is here. I mean, we're here. We're not going anywhere. And as I joke with Keith all the time, everybody come up. We're outlasting everybody. I tell them this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And people jump out in front of us, and I whisper to Keith, Keith, it ain't gonna last. Keith look at me, and then he come back and say, "Oh, you're right. Well, we've been here, and we're doing things the right way, and we want to bring former players." I reach out all the time to former players. We want to bring you from the field to the front office. You have an opportunity to ownership here. You're not going to get that in no other league. Ownership. You have the opportunity to be a head coach here, GM. And believe me, people are not here for free. We take good care of our staff, because we have good qualified people. And people give me a lot of credit. I thank y'all so much, but I can't do this without y'all. There's no way in the world. All of these different, I tell people all the time, I'm like a puzzle. I collect the pieces as I go, and if the piece don't fit, I throw it away. And so far, all the people that I've came in contact with, I went after, they've been a part of the MFL, and we're excited about it. So I want to thank my guests for being here today, and you've been listening to another edition of Inside the MFL. I'm your host, Richard Myles. I'll see you Friday.